Good Tuesday afternoon. I'm meteorologist Tim Pandajis here with your tropical update on Tropical Storm Elsa on July 6th, 2021. As it nears the coast of Florida, pretty much parallels it for the next 12 to 18 hours before making landfall somewhere south of the Big Bend in Florida. So here's the latest. Elsa, as I mentioned, paralleling Florida's west coast. It is battling dry air as well as a large increase in westerly wind shear, and it is extremely evident when we'll look at the satellite imagery coming up in just a second. But it does have plenty of fuel to take advantage of if those conditions wane a little bit. Sea surface temperatures are well into the 80s. That's more than enough sufficient to promote it to strengthen a little bit. Now, there is some strengthening expected, and it could be a borderline high-end tropical storm, maybe a Category 1 hurricane at landfall. That is a possibility, and that's something that needs to be watched very, very closely. It's not really going to change the impacts, though. We're looking at a lot of wind, some storm surge, and of course some flooding. And even thrown in the mix there could be a few tornadoes. We already saw a few tornado warnings out in central Florida on some of the outer bands. All right, here's a look now at the satellite imagery. We'll start things off with the infrared. If you remember from other videos, this kind of imagery tells us the cloud top temperatures and the strength of the thunderstorms within tropical systems. When we see the shades of white and black showing on up here, it shows a burst of convection, a burst of thunderstorm activity, meaning that there could be a small window for some intensification to get underway. Now, when you look at this, try to pinpoint where you think that center of Elsa is. You'd probably point out somewhere around here, right? That's what you'd think by looking at this imagery. But in fact, when we plot it, the center of the storm is well off to the west, and that is an indication, very obvious indication, that westerly shear is dislocating all the convection thunderstorm activity off towards the east. And in normal scenarios, that would be a good thing. It would weaken the storm. But all this is doing is pushing the impacts from the storm farther inland into Florida. And there's hardly any thunderstorm activity, any cloud cover, any wind on the western side of this. And it is slowing down too. The northwest trajectory on this is only down to 10 miles per hour now, and the pressure has actually dropped a little bit. The brand new advisory, in fact, as we're recording this, just popped in at 12:45. It is now back up to 70 mile per hour winds. That's news to me. You're seeing this here first. Northwest winds at 10, projection here at 10 miles per hour, 1,000 millibar central pressure, meaning that it has deepened. But here's what I wanted to show you. The visible satellite imagery. Look at how remarkable looking this is. You've got the low-level circulation completely exposed from the center and off towards the west, and here is that burst of very tall thunderstorm clouds pushing along the coast near Marco Island over through Fort Myers as well. And this is where you're having the strongest winds and the heaviest of the rain and the highest impacts moving along the west coast of Florida. Also, I want to hit on the fact that there's some dry air on the western side. You can see that here as we switch up the imagery to water vapor. Moist system, tropical systems, always very moist, obviously. And then off to the west, you have some pockets of dry air, some of that getting blown into the circulation. And if that gets pulled in to the overall circulation, it'll choke it off a little bit. The dry air is kind of makes the engine peter along just a little bit more. All right, here's the latest track. Again, winds now at 70 miles per hour. So easily we have gusts over hurricane force. This is a high-end tropical storm right now. As we go forward, it looks like the track has actually been shifted a little bit farther to the east, but still remaining just offshore of Tampa Bay. Now, this is not particularly good news, but it is better news than before. If a farther track off to the west here, that would mean the stronger winds will be piling water into Tampa Bay. If, in fact, this does track right into Tampa Bay, those strongest winds will be over here, and we'll probably see a lot more storm surge flooding out through Fort Myers with the winds coming onshore there. So this can be adjustable, and the cone of uncertainty does account for that change east to west, but it is projected by this evening to weaken back down to 65 miles per hour. We'll see what wins out. The westerly wind shear keeping it tilted and keeping it not being able to ventilate properly, or do the warm sea surface temperatures give it an extra burst of convection and organization and strengthening before, in fact, it does make landfall? And it could just skirt on by portions of Tampa Bay. Now, the Big Bend area, looking at early tomorrow morning at 7 a.m., back up to 70 mile an hour winds, high-end tropical storm. Can't be ruled out that it's a Category 1 hurricane with winds of 75 miles an hour, but we are getting tropical storm and hurricane wind gusts here, piling that water on in. A lot of rain and wind all associated with this. Moves over land, quickly loses its strength. It's away from its fuel source. We're down to 40 mile per hour winds 12 hours later. It's still a tropical storm, even a tropical depression as we get through the Carolinas. Then it reemerges into the Atlantic off of Virginia Beach, strengthens back to a tropical storm with winds back up to 45 miles per hour. So now here's something interesting too, a filter we can put on here. Now this is the wind field of Elsa. The yellow bubble that you're seeing here almost looks like an egg or a bean. This is the circumference or the diameter of where you're seeing the tropical storm force winds extending out. And they only extend out about 60 miles from that storm center. And notice again, the strongest winds are dislocated off towards the east there of that storm center. As we go farther out in time, you see another little bubble develop here, the orange. Now these are going to be winds of 55 miles per hour or greater, so still below hurricane force, but these are just sustained winds. We're going to see gusts over hurricane force, over 75 miles per hour. As it heads to the north, here it is, piling that water into Tampa Bay as we get on into tonight and through the overnight and into early tomorrow morning. Storm surge flooding certainly going to be a possibility there. Then it moves north, still has a pretty large wind field. In fact, that wind field expands a little bit as it heads towards the Big Bend, makes landfall, and then that wind field should shrink significantly. All right, here's the radar imagery as we're looking at Elsa on radar from Key West and from Tampa Bay. And as we put it in motion here, you can see the storm center of Elsa sitting and spinning well off to the southwest of Naples in Florida, throwing a lot of moisture. You see the widespread yellows and oranges on the radar indicating 1 to 2 inch an hour rainfall rates. And with its slow movement only at 10 miles per hour, we're looking at 3 to 6 inches of rain easily here. Now there's that severe threat I'm talking about. This is a tornado watch or tornado warning polygon, I should say, lifting on through the outermost bands. It's a little bit easier when you have tropical systems. They introduce the spin in the atmosphere, so the Storm Prediction Center says that a level 2 out of a 5-level system is possible for strong thunderstorms, severe thunderstorms that could be tornadic. It's just a little easier to spin up a tornado. Most of the time, those are on the weaker side, though. Rainfall we're looking at here, anywhere from 3 to 6 inches, locally heavier amounts there as this winds to the north. Thankfully, it does pick up forward speed, so we're not going to see the heaviest rains spreading farther to the north there. And after it makes landfall, it'll start to rain itself out. Probability of seeing at least tropical storm force winds 39 miles per hour or greater. Nearly a certainty along the coastline in Florida through Tampa Bay, 100% chance. And then we've got the hurricane force wind gusts on top of that. Now, a little premature here, but likely we'll be making landfall in Florida, but this will be the third landfalling tropical system so far in 2021. Keep in mind, we've only had 5 systems so far, so 3 out of those 5 making landfall. I'm going to end on some good news here because the tropical Atlantic, besides Elsa, is very, very quiet. There are no areas of concern, no areas to even be monitoring at the current time as the main development region remains quiet, at least for the next 5 days or so. All right, if you have a question, reach out on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and on Facebook. We'll have more updates right through this evening and through tomorrow.